Right, this should be the second part of vocab number 12. This is the continuation of thinking. Learning was vocab 11, classical, operant, social. Then we started to talk about thinking, where we moved on to vocab 12, and this should be the second part of vocab 12. And then the third part will be the next lecture on language. But this one is about thinking, solving problems, making decisions, how we continue to do that. Now, where we left off last lecture, we were talking about fixation. When you become fixated in your way of thinking, it impedes your ability to solve problems because it's the way that it's always worked and everything else. We talked about heuristics and shortcuts, and then once I do something, it builds some intuition. Um, because I have insight on these particular things. And now we're going to talk about how building that type of thinking can sometimes be good and sometimes be bad with us as well. So again, we talked about fixation. We talked about the pilot jumping out in the Korean War because he was used to the right-handed parachute to get to left-handed parachutes, falls to his death. So let's talk a little bit about functional fixedness. And functional fixedness becomes interesting because this sometimes limits our thinking because we look at something and we look at it as something that it can do, and it can only do that. For example, this right here. There we are, paperclip that you see on your thing right there. Paperclip, which is used for clipping papers, but what else could it be used for? Well, if you are ingenious, it could be used for picking a lock. It could be used for picking your fingernails. It could be used for a lot of different things. You could take the side of it here and use it as a screwdriver. I've used this before as a tie clip. Put it right behind my tie and keeps my tie, whenever I'd have to wear a tie, would stop it from being moved. So there's a lot of different things that it can be used for besides just clipping paper. Because when we get to that sort of idea of a functional fixedness, it stops us from being able to solve problems. You take this lady right here holding onto this rope. How do you grab hold of this rope over here? And with everything in the room, it's a little bit difficult until she realizes she can take that, rock it back and forth, and with that weight, eventually swing the rope over to herself. And she can catch it. There's also the old riddle. You got a bag, excuse me, you got a box of matches, you got a set of thumbtacks, you've got a candle. How do you put this candle on a bulletin board? Where a lot of people go, well, you melt part of the candle, you take the tacks and you melt the tacks into the candle, and you try all these different sort of things. But there's always the idea of, how about if I just used the box? And a lot of times we don't think about that. We think about the box of matches is there to hold the matches, but you can use the box as well. So this is where necessity becomes the mother of invention. We sort of are able to figure out how to do things with what we've got instead of longing for things that we don't. So this intuition is built out of all of these things that we do. We use our intuition quite a bit. Remember, we said animals have instincts. They're born knowing certain things. Humans learn over time, and as we learn over time, we build up intuition. We don't really think systematically. We don't sort of go, okay, let me schedule my days in advance that I should get out an umbrella. We just go out, looks like rain, maybe I should grab an umbrella. Should I trust a person? We read body language and all these other things of where we've been successful and where we've had failings of trusting people in the past. Do I shoot or do I pass? You know, when you're playing basketball, you don't sit there and go, okay, well, I'm about 34% from this spot. Tommy's about 42% from that, but there's about an 86% chance I can get the pass there. So do I make, you don't go through all that. You just, you pass or you shoot. You know, most of the decisions we make on the fly by the seat of our pants. When I'm turning from Skinner onto Spring Cypress, I don't sit there and go, all right, it just turned yellow. It'll be yellow for another 1.2 seconds. I'm currently going 32 miles per hour. There was precipitation yesterday. If I put my steering wheel at an angle of 46 degrees, we don't go, we just turn. You just churn. And that's where most of our human actions happen. Heuristics help us make shortcuts because we don't have the time to analyze every situation carefully and run through every possible scenario. And when we do run through every possible scenario, it tends to, as we talked about in Unit 1, stress us out. So again, we're not born with a lot of instincts, so we develop this intuition as we go through life. But with this intuition, we can also sometimes get blinded by logic or get blinded by past biases and all these other things, where you see data plus intuition would equal better decisions, but sometimes there can be bias that gets in the way of our intuition as well. So when we talk about heuristics, remember heuristics were a shortcut. It was a shortcut of ways of figuring things out. Well, there's two different types of heuristics that I want to talk about here. One of them is a representative heuristic. And a representative heuristic is based on the idea that the world is going to even out, that the world is fair, that there is flip a coin, it's going to land on heads an even number of times, that it's going to land on tails. And that's great if time was infinite. But time is not infinite. If I flip a coin 10 times in a row and 10 times in a row, it lands on heads, the odds of it landing on tails the next time are still 50-50, because each coin is in of itself, each flip of the coin is in of itself its own thing. If you ever play roulette, which you shouldn't play roulette because gambling is wrong and immoral, but you can bet on the black, you can bet on the red, you can bet on odd, you can bet on even, 1 to 18, you can bet on these numbers right here, which is that column, that column, that column, this third, that third, that third, or this third and that third. There's a lot of different ways to do this, but you've got a 1 in 38 chance, 1 in 36, and then there's 2 zeros on there, which I hate. But this is sort of how you can gamble, and it's completely by chance, and you shouldn't gamble because gambling is wrong and immoral. But what they do is they put up this little board up there, so you kind of read the past few results. And what a lot of people will do is they'll look at this and go, oh, it hit red 4 times in a row. Don't bet on red. Blacks do. No, it's not. Time is infinite. It doesn't have to even out. The world is not fair. It doesn't all have to even out. When we take a look at this, who graduated from Harvard? This swimsuit model or Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook? And of course, your answer is the swimsuit model. Well, you go, well, but swimsuit models don't go to Harvard. Sure they do. That one does. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out his sophomore year. He's done okay, but he's still a Harvard dropout, not a Harvard graduate. So when it comes to these availability heuristics, we go what's available in our minds. We rely on information that's more easily recalled, and we overlook more prominent info. You remember the times that you changed your answer on a test and you got it wrong, so you think changing your answer on a test is the worst thing to do, but you forget all the times where you changed it into the right answer because it worked out for you, and there wasn't the hurt or the pain that came along with it. If I were to ask you if you took a random paragraph from a random book off of a random shelf, is the letter K more likely to be the first or the third letter of a word? Well, you think, well, K, there's an entire part of the dictionary that starts with K, so yeah, it'd be more likely to be the first until we start to think of letters, or I'm sorry, we start to think of words where it's a third letter, like, which would be Mike, and hike, and psych, and psych wouldn't be it. But type, you get all these other, and make or bake or rake or fake, now I'm starting to see others. But normally we would ignore those because we don't think of the third letter being K, and it's 2 to 3 times more likely to be the third letter of a word. But we don't think of the third letter of a word, we think of the first letter of a word. We read all these stories of people winning the lottery all the time, and as a result, we overestimate the chances that you'll win it as well. Look at all these winners. I see all these stories about all these winners. Yes, but those are few and far between. There's many more losers. For every dollar that is won in the lottery, at least $2 have to be lost in order to make up for that $1. So your odds are absolutely terrible. But the news is going to do the story of the person who wins. And you go, well, someone's got to win. Well, someone also has to get hit by a truck today and die. So you don't want that person to be you, and your odds are actually better of that happening. But we think that we're special. We think that we're gonna get, we deserve more and everything else because we are the star of our story. And again, this is why we're more likely, again, back to here, the grade changes. We talked about this back when we talked about memory. We tend to remember the times where it hurt us, but actually it's really unlikely to hurt us. Under the influence, how the group changes what we think. When we're around other people, they're going to get in our way. They're going to affect our heuristics and whatnot. You can take a look back at that if you'd like. Again, when it comes to availability heuristic, the media uses stories that get you to tune in that don't necessarily represent the whole. Everybody thinks that teenage crime is so high because that's what kids put videos out of themselves doing as bad things. Nobody's making a YouTube video of themselves studying for their AP chemistry test. You're not going to get any likes. You're not getting any tunage. You're not going to get any whatever. People don't really get liked for nice comments. It's mean comments that we pay attention. Oh my God, how did somebody say that? And so then we assume that everybody's mean. Well, it's just that those are the things that are actually getting attention. And we pay a little bit more of an attention to that. Reports about what went wrong are going to be much greater than reports about what went right. So many people get upset about school shootings at Columbine High School in Colorado, where inner city schools shootings that year were much higher, but the fact that it happened someplace where it normally didn't happen, you know, oh, it could come into my neighborhood as well. Shark Week, you're 66 times more likely to get killed by bees or wasps than a shark. You're 3 times more likely to get killed in an accident at a playground, at an elementary school, than you are a shark. But we don't think about that because we think we have control of those particular things. Fear of flying, you're 26 times more likely to die in a car crash than on a plane, but not every car crash is reported. But when a plane goes down, everybody's tuned in because they think it's us. Roller coasters versus merry-go-rounds. Merry-go-rounds are far more dangerous than roller coasters. Roller coasters, you're strapped in, there's all those safety precautions, everything else. Merry-go-rounds, you're riding on like 2 animals at the same time. Politicians get elected by telling you what is wrong. Fear of being attacked, producing on fear, hitting the amygdala, getting you nervous that if you don't vote for me, your life's going to hell in a handbasket. Oh, I better vote for you. And this is all based on what they present to you, what this available information is. I use this with ISIS because, and when I made this, people were all about ISIS. Oh, a terrorist attack and ISIS. Well, the odds aren't that great. Even back in 2015, when there was an attack in California at a Christmas party, which was tragic. 14 people were killed in that one attack, which was the entire year. 30 people died every day in 2015 from gun violence. But we're not going to outlaw gun violence. We're not going to build borders against guns getting into this country because we think we control the guns. 60 people die every day in 2015 from suicide. So we're twice as dangerous towards ourselves as other people are towards us with a gun, but we don't ban us from ourselves. 30 people die every day in 2015 from auto accidents. We're not going to ban cars. 3 people die every day in 2015 from domestic violence. We're not going to ban marriage. The causes of death, there's 17,000 homicides every year, but there's about 31,000 suicides. We're twice as dangerous to ourselves as anybody else is, but we have this perception, this availability heuristic of myself that I control me. Yeah, but I'm also around me a lot more than anybody else is. So the odds of me doing harm to myself are actually greater than anybody else doing harm to me because I'm always around me. But what we tend to do is we tend to look at the freak situations. And when we look at the freak situations, we think that that's happening all the time. Again, if you take a look at heart disease is the #1 killer in America. Yet fast food is still legal. As a matter of fact, we'll have it delivered to our house. But when you look at all the other deaths in America, which we pay attention to, homicide, suicide, they're very small fractions compared to heart disease, cancer, stroke, all these other things. But we pay attention to the freak things because the freak things like crushed by human stampede, Black Friday, shark attack, bees, wasps, whatever, that's more, I don't think I have control of that. It's disease. Disease is what we should be concerned of, but disease you can't see. All right. And again, I'm sitting here right now making these videos while the whole school shutdown of coronavirus is going on. And that's pretty tricky because it's out there, but you can't see it, but you know it's out there. So that one's even a little bit scarier that people are going with. But again, the odds of me getting the coronavirus and dying from it, extraordinarily low because I'm staying at home and I'm relatively healthy and I'm not in my 60s or 70s and I don't have underlying health issues. Of course, I say this. How screwed up would it be if I leave this behind? So again, fear is sort of that driving factor, the terror management theory of us that sometimes controls our actions. We tend to be overconfident. We think we know more than we do because we don't want to say the words I don't know. Because if I say the words I don't know, it sounds like I'm saying I'm stupid. But sometimes we shouldn't be as confident as we are. You know, what are the odds I'm going to get pregnant? Well, you know, if you have sex, those odds are much greater than if you don't. What are the odds I get pulled over on my way home? Well, if you drink and drive, the odds are greater than if you don't drink and drive. So what we do is we tend to think we know things, and instead of displaying, you know, better answers. For example, if you had to come up with a range between one number and another number of how long the Mississippi River is, how long would you say that it is? And a lot of people would go between 2,000 or 3,000 miles, between 1,000 and 2,000, between 1,000 and 4,000. They'll come up with a pretty specific range. But what if I said the Mississippi River was somewhere between 0 and 1,000,000 miles? I'd be right. I would be right. It wouldn't be necessarily show intelligence, but I'd be right. By the way, your answer is 2,320 miles. The Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't think this is in your notes, but you might want to write it down, because this, especially with everything going on right now in society, I would not be shocked if they put this on your AP exam. The Dunning-Kruger effect is basically a cognitive bias in which our lack of knowledge makes us think we know more than what we do. We're too stupid to realize how stupid we are sometimes, okay? It's somebody who watches a couple of football games and thinks, I know everything about football, and then suddenly they get in and they start playing football, or they become a football coach or whatever, and they realize, wow, this is really hard. Or it's someone who watches a few Grey's Anatomy episodes. Okay, so here's me, I know nothing. I watch a few Grey's Anatomy episodes. I go, well, I know everything about medication and I can diagnose your problem and everything else. Then I decide to go to med school. I'm like, whoa, medicine, hard. And then I got to have that humility of realizing I don't know anything about this. And then only then can I build upon that. So it's having that humility, having that ability to realize I don't know everything. I don't know all about this. But when people think that they do, and again, sitting in here as the coronavirus is going on in the spring of 2020, there's a lot of people on the internet or whatnot that think they know everything about this particular thing. So they're giving people advice of what to do, what not to do, and everything. You don't know. You're not a doctor. You haven't studied this all your life. So it becomes really sort of frustrating when you listen to these inept experts, if you would. It's like everybody thinks they have a sense of humor. But we don't all have a sense of humor. Everybody thinks they're smarter than what they are. Everybody thinks all these other things because, again, we're dealing with ourselves. But without self-awareness of your faults, without realizing there's a lot of things I don't know, that's the only way you can learn. If you think you know everything, you can't learn. One of the things that drove me crazy when my daughter was in junior high, I would go, Julia, you need to do it. And she's like, yeah, I know, but you don't know. It's okay to admit that you don't know. But when you get people that go, oh, I know everything. I'm the best. I know better than everybody else. No, you don't. There's got to be some humility there. That you have to have humility, because having this humility that you don't know everything is the only possible way that you can learn. You have to be self-aware of your own faults, of your own lack of ability. That's the only way you can get better at it. Okay, so you have to admit that you're stupid before you can learn. But we think that we know more than we do. We feel more knowledgeable, given decision-making powers, parents, the right to vote, all these things. But we really just don't know. And Einstein, with the greatest quote here, the more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. And that's humility, and that's how you learn. But without that humility, oh, I know everything. Oh, I'm the best. Oh, everybody, I'm the best. I'm the best. It's okay to have confidence, but a blind confidence can be scary, a little bit scary. Now, a lot of times we make decisions and we form judgments based on how a question is framed. We talked about this before when we talked about research and whatnot. Do you like botany, or which is the study of trees and plants? If I don't know what botany is, I can't answer that question. But a lot of time, how it's phrased is going to determine whether or not someone wants to buy something. I've used as an example in class before, I think I used this. You get the big drink at Buc-ee's, and for 69 cents, you can get 44 ounces, or for 59 cents, you get 32. So, it's only 10 cents more to get the 44 ounce. It's only 10 cents. Yeah, but you already kind of got screwed over on the first 59 cents because it only cost them 8 cents to put that whole thing together. But you think, I'm getting a deal. And since I'm getting a deal, that's why we biggie size it. It's like, would you like to make it a large size? Oh, a large size, it's even better. So the way that something is framed is going to have a great impact on how I decide about that particular thing. You look at this survey question right here. You favor or oppose blank serving in the military. When the word is homosexuals, only 34% of people strongly favored that, 25% somewhat favored it. So you got about 59% people All right, then you've got opposed, opposed. Now, when you said you favor or oppose gay men and lesbians, now we're talking gay men, lesbians, ooh, stronger. And suddenly we're up to 70% of people approved of it just by changing it from homosexuals, which sounds a little bit more feminine, to gay men and lesbians, which sounds a little bit more masculine. And that sort of changes the way that people go. When something's on sale, you go to the outlet mall, it's on sale. Look at how much I saved. But if you've ever worked at the outlet mall, you realize nothing is regular price. And giving the people the idea that they saved money, what you do is you overprice it. And then you knock the price down so they feel like I'm getting the thing I want, plus I saved money. It's all about framing. It gives us our enjoyment or dissatisfaction. You buy the new headphones, you're very happy with your $50 headphones, and they're great. I love them. The sound is fantastic. It's canceling other things out. Then you get on Amazon and you see the $30. You're like, oh crap, I hate my headphones because of now how it's framed. And you can see a bunch of things here on the psychology of advertising. Advertising is all about framing and putting it in order. Remember, we talked about Watson after baby Albert got out of that and went into advertising and talked about how it made you feel that particular product, how brands tap into your subconscious, your loyalty towards a brand. I got to have the Adidas on me, or I got to have the swoosh on me, or whatever. That's framed. If it's Adidas, it must be better quality than if it doesn't have an Adidas on it. That gets into our mind and we frame it a certain way, the plain socks versus the socks with a logo on them. This can be used in how you compare situations to people around you. It's one of my favorite studies right here. People were told to pretend that they lived in a place called Sunbury, Georgia. Here's Sunbury, Georgia, right on the coast. It's not a real city. But they're told there's a hurricane warning, that a hurricane could be coming through Georgia and the Carolinas and Florida right here and hitting you here in Sunbury. Sunbury's got a 27% chance. Just south of you's got 3, 17, 17, 16, 15, 5 to hit those particular regions. And they ask people, would you be willing to leave? Would you evacuate if your odds were 27% and everybody else's odds were lower than yours? And the majority of people said, yes, I'm gone. Second group of people were told to look at map B, where Sunbury has the same 27% chance of getting hit. South of them, 3%, and South Carolina's got a 70% chance. Would you leave based on that? Now, again, both of these are the same. 27% chance it could hit Sunbury, 73% chance it could hit the other places. But the people who saw map A were more concerned with the hurricane hitting, because to them, we're the biggest number. Here, I'm the smallest number. And that's where you get the way that it's framed. And a lot of people, again, as I'm sitting right here during the whole coronavirus thing, I'm hearing a lot of people going, they shouldn't be focusing on the deaths. They should be focusing on the people who are surviving. People who are getting better. To focus on the deaths just brings everyone down. To focus on the sickness just brings everyone down. Maybe. But here's the problem. If we start focusing on the people that are recovering, we start focusing on the survival, and we start focusing on those numbers, what are people going to start doing? They're going to start going out. They're going to start going to the store. They're going to start hanging out in groups and everything else. And go, oh, look at all these people that are surviving. That's why sometimes you need to scare people with the framing to get them to stay home and off the beach and everything else. Okay, again, what would you rather hear from a doctor? 20% of the people that have what you have die? Or would you rather hear that there's an 80% survival rate? Because again, we talked about with these things, attitude is everything. Federal Express will tell you they don't charge you anything extra to pick up your package from home, yet they have a drop-off discount. Well, then theoretically, are you not charging me extra to pick it up from my home if there's a drop-off discount? If a condom is listed as having a 95% chance of stopping AIDS, 90% of college students think that that's effective. But when they were told that the condoms have a 5% failure rate, only 40% thought it was effective. It's the same rates. But when you focus on the failure rather than focus on the positive, that's what people are going to go with. That's what they're going to go with. If you donate money, this cute bunny will live happily ever after. If you don't donate money, this cute bunny will die. Well, how do you frame it? It's all in that. What's the recovery, whatnot. Now, my belief bias can also get in the way because I want my particular beliefs or an argument that makes sense to me. I want to continue to use that argument because it's made sense to me in the past, which is why, again, people who grow up liberal are more likely to stay liberal. People who grow up conservative are most likely to stay conservative. People who grow up not caring about politics aren't going to grow up and suddenly care about politics. Some will change, but for the most part, we stay the same. We don't change religions, anything else, because we're born with our particular biases. Why would I change that? So again, we'll even believe an argument if the logic of the argument is faulty, as long as we believe the conclusion of the argument. For example, take a look at this first one. Democrats support free speech. Well, that's true. Dictators are not Democrats. That is true. Therefore, dictators do not support free speech. I see no problem with that. I agree with the conclusion, so I agree with your premise. Well, really? Seems like a logical argument because I believe in the premise and I believe in the conclusion. Well, Democrats support free speech. True. Republicans are not Democrats. True. Therefore, Republicans do not support free speech. Well, that's false. Trump's got the biggest Twitter account of them all. You know, of course they support free speech, but this is the exact same logic, the exact same argument as up here. But your belief up here is that Democrats have an absolute stronghold on free speech. No, they don't. They're not the only ones who have it. So again, you can't just stick with the same logic because the same logic doesn't necessarily apply to every situation. Robins have feathers, chickens are not robins, therefore chickens do not have feathers. Yeah, they do. And again, this is stuff that if you ever go off to college and take a philosophy class, that'll screw you up forever. You'll start to ask philosophical questions like, if God is so powerful, could he make a rock that not even he could pick up? But that just, your brain hurts and blood comes out your ears. Believe perseverance. Again, this idea that I'm going to cling to my initial concepts after the basis of which were formed have been discredited. We give more credit to evidence that supports our belief. This is what's known as cognitive dissonance. Now, cognitive dissonance is covered in social psychology. For some of you guys, we did not go through social psychology. What cognitive dissonance basically is that I'm only going to believe logic that supports my conclusions. For example, I know that smoking is wrong and I shouldn't smoke. I don't smoke. But let's say I were a smoker. All right, and I know that smoking is wrong. So, but I want to smoke, and I get so I'll start to go. Well, it's just one cigarette. I only do it when I drink. It's healthy cigarettes. I'm vaping instead, so it's not but it's still the nicotine and everything else. So cognitive dissonance is where we dissuade logic. You know, we know that we should give blood, but oh, that's a big deal. I don't want to give blood. Well, enough people gave blood. That's cognitive dissonance. All right. Belief perseverance is this idea that I'm going to stick with my particular belief, and if you don't go with my belief, you're wrong. All right. Republicans believe in Fox News. Democrats believe in MSNBC. Both think that the other news is simply propaganda or fake news, which is really kind of a new trend in the last 3 or 4 years. Because since you don't agree with me, since you don't support me, since you're critical of me, you're wrong, you're out to get me. When in truth, it could just be the facts. But if we disagree with the facts, I don't want to admit that I'm wrong. So the source of the facts is what's wrong. When people are given the results of a study on capital punishment, those that are in favor of it become more in favor of it. Yes, that's why you have capital punishment. Yes, but those against capital punishment will take everything out of that argument that supports being against capital punishment. And this is what's known as group polarization. We are going to separate more and more and more and get into our own little categories. And this happens with social media. And again, group polarization is a social psychology thing, but it's with social media. We follow people we agree with. We don't follow people we disagree with because they annoy us. I'm going to block that person. I don't like that person. But that never gives us the other side of the coin. It never lets us look at the other things. You should watch both Fox News and MSNBC and CNN and everyone else and know that the answer is somewhere in the middle of all that. Rooted in the idea that we don't want to admit that we're wrong or fear of looking foolish, we will basically stick with our beliefs. If I label a child as gifted, well, then I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt on grades because I said they were gifted. They failed that thing. Well, I can't admit that I was wrong. They just must have had a bad day or whatever. But if I label a kid as disabled or slow and they suddenly do well, I'm going to, how dare they do well? I got to check to see if they cheated. Because we don't want to go away from the idea that maybe my categorization, maybe my conclusion was wrong. So I only want to take in information to support my truth. Again, if I'm in a bad relationship, others don't like, you look for the good things, you ignore the bad things because I don't want to admit that I've been in the wrong relationship for so many years. Once a cheater, always a cheater, all these things like that. Now, also put this in your notes because this could show up as well. I don't think it's in the outline. The central route of persuasion. This is where the listener is persuaded to act based on the content itself. I'm going to try to persuade you to do something. I'm going to say, this kid is not a punching bag. Violence against children is wrong. Child, how dare you do that? You know, that's the central route of persuasion. But most advertisement uses what's called the peripheral route of persuasion. This is where the listener decides whether to agree with the message based on other cues besides the strength of the argument. A vino leads to healthier skin. Okay, well, there's no evidence here that it leads to healthier skin, but there's Jennifer Aniston. Jennifer Aniston has great skin, and she's with a vino, so her skin's great. A vino's great. This must be great too. And this goes back to the idea of the halo effect. They're good in one thing, they must be better in others. President Trump, here he is in his big Trump Tower with his family and his wife, and he was able to get a beautiful wife, have a great kid, have a great family. So he must, and was a great businessman, so he must be going to be a great president too. And that's the peripheral route of persuasion. Look at all these other things I did. Forget the fact that he had no experience before he was president. Look at all of his other successes, and that's the peripheral route of persuasion. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong that he got elected, but I'm saying that's how he got elected. He got elected as an outsider. This is also what's known in social psychology as the foot in the door versus the door in the face phenomenon. The foot in the door phenomenon is when you ask for something very, very small and then you work your way up. You know, can I borrow a nickel? Sure. Then you pay the nickel back. Can I borrow a quarter? Sure. Then you pay the quarter back. Can I borrow a dollar? Yes. And you build credit. Versus the door in the face where you walk up to a girl and go, would you marry me and have my children? No. How about lunch? Well, that seems reasonable. Yes. That's the door in the face. So I'm not just asking you to dinner and getting to the point. I'm going to go around. Let me ask you something outrageous. So this next request doesn't seem that great. That's a peripheral route of persuasion, not getting to the point, sort of working your way around to the point. Last thing we need to talk about is something called artificial intelligence. I'm watching Westworld right now. Yikes. This is the theory and development of computer systems, that they're supposed to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. And computers can be programmed to do stuff. You program it, it does stuff. You program it, it does stuff. Program it to do this, it does that. Program it to do that, it does that. Program it to play chess or play whatever. You know, you repeat this behavior again and again. You build a car, you repeat that behavior again and again. That's what computers have always been known to do. Now, what computers are starting to have is what is called artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence means that the computer is now programmed to learn. So not only are they programmed to do behavior that's already been done, but they're now programmed to learn from the behavior of others. For example, when you're playing a video game and you put the AI level really, really high, the artificial intelligence level really, really high, well, then what happens is the computer starts to learn from your moves. Oh, it's 3rd and 8, and you always do that play. Well, I'm going to be ready in the defense for that play. They become smarter in the same way that if you play someone in a video game so many times, you get used to their moves. You play somebody in poker so many times, you should gamble because gambling is wrong and immoral, but you get used to when they're going to bet, when they're going to fold everything else, and computers can learn this stuff as well. Now, again, we get very frustrated, oh, the computer is cheating. No, they're learning. They're learning, and you just set it up to be more of a learner. So what happens is they have these neural networks where when you do the same repeated activity again, it goes through the same routes and it sees these patterns and it sort of makes adjustments towards those patterns. So it learns to recognize visual patterns, face recognition, finger recognition on your phone, whatever. It can learn to recognize smells now. Can learn from experience. Google will learn what website you're going to. The correction on your phone, the autocorrect shows up with words. I'm sure some of you guys, some of the slang, you put a couple of letters in the slang term you use is in there because that's the term you use all the time. The websites you go to, the products that you go and you look at, and then suddenly there's an advertisement on an entirely different program for this thing that I looked at on an entirely different site. Because they're learning from that. Dating websites, finding matches based on other profiles you looked at. Facebook looks all these things to determine your likes. When we look at why is Google free, why is eBay free, why is Facebook free, Instagram free, Twitter free, yet they're worth billions of dollars because they're gathering data. You give them data, they learn, and they can take this and sell it back to you. That's artificial intelligence, where not just humans, but now computers also have the ability to learn. That wraps up that lecture. We got one more in this unit, one more in Unit 6. It's going to be on language. So language is coming up next, and that will wrap up vocab number 12, 13, 13, 13, vocab 13.